Hey beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are having an amazing, marvelous, and magnificent day or night. My name is Tati V, and if you're a true crime lover like me, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Before we get into today's video, I do just want to share with you two things. First and foremost, shout out to my first comment winner, Key Marie. Thank you so much for being the first comment winner. And if any of you guys want to be the first comment winner, just comment down below being the first one, and you could be featured in my next upcoming video. Also, I do have a true crime podcast. It's called Talk True Crime to Me. I will leave it linked down below, and you all can go ahead and check it out. It is in my regular voice. I'm not whispering, but it is still soothing. Today's video, we are going to be reading the true crime book. So sit back, relax, grab a snack, some water, some wine, anything that warms your little heart, and enjoy some crime time. Warning, this video may contain details of graphic content. This channel is for mature audiences only. Some viewers might find this disturbing. The case of Antoinette Frank demonstrates the tragic consequences that can occur when an individual is given police powers while being completely unfit to carry them out. In the late 1990s, the New Orleans Police Department was at a crisis point. The department was experiencing a major turnover in officers due to the department's ineffectiveness. The pay scale for New Orleans police officers was lower than most cities of comparable size. Further, there was widespread corruption, and several officers have been arrested for committing crimes, including murder and selling of drugs. The department had a requirement that they could only hire residents of New Orleans. I think I heard of this case. For Antoinette Frank, born April 30th, 1971, becoming a police officer was a childhood dream. She'd always wanted to be a police officer. Frank was accepted to the New Orleans Police Academy in the early 90s and graduated on February 28th, 1993. She was granted an interview with the New Orleans Police Department the same month. It was at this point that the process broke down and the seeds of a nightmare were planted. In reviewing her job application, it became evident that Frank had made some untruthful statements. Further, several psychiatric evaluations concluded that she was not suitable for hire. Despite all this damning evidence, the New Orleans Police Department decided to hire her anyway. Oh Lord. Due to their shortage of officers. In addition, Frank was black, which they thought might be useful in the department's attempts to reduce racial tensions. While on the job, fellow officers had the impression that Antoinette lacked the confidence and decisiveness needed to be a police officer. She came off as weak and unsure. Some went as far as to say she made irrational decisions. After 6 months on the force, Antoinette's supervisor wanted her to go back to the academy for further training. However, he was faced with a severe shortage of officers, so instead he opted to team her up with a veteran officer. The proverbial pouring of, quote, gas on the fire, end quote, came when Antoinette encountered 18-year-old Roger Lacaze, a drug dealer who had been shot during an altercation with other dealers. Antoinette was assigned to take a statement. The line between professional conduct and emotional involvement dissolved as Antoinette and Roger quickly developed feelings for each other. What started off as a desire to help Roger get his life in order soon developed into a sexual relationship. And how old was she? So she was about in her early 20s, I want to say. were spending more and more time together, including when Antoinette was on the job. Antoinette was not at all shy about her relationship with Roger and openly included him in her police work. Well, she allowed him to ride with her while she was on duty and let him accompany her on police matters. She even introduced him to others as her trainee or as her nephew. One of the places Antoinette frequented was Kim, a Vietnamese restaurant located on the east side of New Orleans. Antoinette used to do security work at the restaurant and had developed a friendly relationship with its owners. They often served her free food. It was for this reason that Frank took Roger to the restaurant on March 4th, 1995. When Antoinette stopped doing security at Kim Vietnamese restaurant, Ronald Williams replaced her. Ronald was also on the force, in charge of scheduling the department's police officers, but was working security at the restaurant to supplement his income. Because of the low pay, many New Orleans police officers did security work on the side to make ends meet. When Antoinette and Roger arrived at the restaurant, Antoinette introduced Roger to Williams as her nephew. Williams did not fall for her lies. He recognized Roger as a drug dealer he had encountered in the past. See, that's where she messed up at, introducing this little boy to everyone, especially like her colleagues. I mean, why would you do that? And y'all having like an inappropriate relationship. I don't like who would do something like that. It was midnight and the restaurant owner's daughter, 24-year-old Chau Vu, was helping her brothers Quoc and her sister Quoc to close the restaurant. Other than Williams and the Vu children, the restaurant was empty except Antoinette and Roger. They had stayed past closing time, lingering to finish their meals and talk to Chau and her siblings. They finally left at 11 p.m. Chau went to the kitchen to count the money and collect Officer Williams' payment for his services. It was then she noticed the key to the restaurant's front door was missing. She had last seen the key before letting Antoinette and Roger out of the restaurant. After they had left, she locked the front door from the inside. She paid Williams and mentioned to him that she was unable to find the key. Williams advised her that Roger was not Antoinette's nephew and that he could not be trusted. He explained to her about his past encounters with Roger. Suddenly, they heard someone at the front door demanding to be let in. Whoever was on the outside was banging and shaking the door. Chau rushed back to the kitchen and hid the money in a microwave oven before returning to the front of the restaurant. She saw Quoc and Quoc talking to Williams. Suddenly, the front door opened and Frank entered the restaurant while Antoinette. She used the key she had stolen. Williams approached Antoinette to confront her about the key, but Antoinette completely ignored him and walked with determination toward the kitchen. As she passed Quoc and Quoc, she shoved him through the kitchen door and followed behind them. Before Williams could do anything, the front door flew open. It was Roger. He had a 9mm pistol drawn and shot Williams in the back of the head. The bullet was shot at close range and severed Williams' spine, causing him to fall to the ground, unable to move. Roger fired 2 fatal shots, one at Williams' head and the other into his back. He then took Williams' service revolver and his wallet. Distracted by the shooting, Antoinette left the kitchen and headed to the front of the restaurant. Chau used the opportunity to grab Quoc and Quoc and hid them inside the walk-in cooler. She turned off the lights in the kitchen and hid inside a small storage space at the back of the kitchen. She did not know where Roger was. Antoinette and Roger returned to kitchen and searched desperately for the money, which they eventually found. Now that they had the money, Antoinette and Roger opened the door of the walk-in cooler, forced Quoc and Quoc to their knees, and then shot them execution style. They searched for Chau, but were unable to find her. Fearing that their shots may have been heard from outside the restaurant, they took off. Chau ran out of the restaurant to a neighboring business and used their phone to call 911. Unknown to Chau, Antoinette intercepted the 911 dispatcher's call and advised the dispatcher that she would respond to the shooting. Oh my god, that is just sick. Completely sick. When Antoinette arrived back to the restaurant, she ran towards Chau. Fortunately for Chau, several police officers had arrived at the restaurant before Antoinette did. The other officers approached Antoinette before she could reach Chau. Chau acted innocently and asked what was happening and if Chau was alright. Chau was terrified and in disbelief that the person who had killed her siblings was now acting as though she wanted to help. The officer sensed Chau's fear and told Antoinette not to leave. One of the officers took Chau aside and in broken English, she told them what happened. Chau explained that Frank, or Antoinette and Roger, were the ones who had robbed the family's restaurant and murdered her brother and sister. The police took Antoinette into custody and brought her to the station for interrogation. She told the detectives what had happened and even disclosed where she had dropped off Roger. Antoinette was charged and Roger was later picked up and taken into custody. They were interviewed separately with each one implicating the other. Antoinette stated she shot Chau's siblings because Roger forced her to at gunpoint, while Roger claimed Frank or Antoinette was the mastermind behind the operation. Antoinette and Roger were indicted by a grand jury on April 28, 1995. Roger's trial began July 17, 1995 and lasted 5 days. Antoinette's trial began on September 5, 1995. The defense had subpoenaed 40 witnesses, yet not one of the witnesses was called to testify. The jury deliberated for 22 minutes on September 12, 1995, returning with a guilty verdict, which was a record for a capital murder case in the city of New Orleans. During the penalty phase, it took only 45 minutes for the jury to decide to give Roger the death penalty. Antoinette became the first police officer to be convicted of killing another police officer and was sentenced to death on October 20th, 1995. Whoa. Way to go. The first police officer to kill another police officer. Frank's attorney appealed to the Louisiana Supreme Court, arguing against the death sentence by presenting testimony from a psychiatrist who had evaluated Antoinette. The evaluation concluded Antoinette was suffering from trauma and diagnosed her with narcissistic personality disorder. The Louisiana Supreme Court ruled Antoinette should face the death penalty as previously judged. Antoinette was sent to death row at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, located near Baton Rouge. She was only the second woman in Louisiana's history to be sent to death row. She really made history with this one. First, she was the first police officer to kill another police officer, and now she's the second woman to be sent to death row in Louisiana. She really did that. About 2 years before the murders at the Kim An Vietnamese restaurant, Antoinette's father, Adam Frank, disappeared and was reported missing. The last time he had been seen was at his daughter's home, where he had been staying. In November 1995, 1 month after Frank was found guilty, someone reported a foul smell coming from her home while she was on the road. A K-9 unit was sent in and the police found a human skull under the house. The skull had a bullet hole in it. It was identified as Adam Frank because Antoinette Frank was already facing the death penalty. No further charges were pursued. During the trial, 2 witnesses testified that on February 4th, 1995, they had witnessed Antoinette and Roger engage in criminal activity unrelated to the shooting in the restaurant. The witnesses, John Stevens and Anthony Wallace, testified that Stevens had an altercation with Roger after leaving a party they had attended. Stevens was about to get into a fight with Roger, but Wallace convinced him to leave, and they did. Stephen and Wallace drove away in order to avoid a fight. After a few minutes of driving, they were pulled over by a police car. The officer was Antoinette. Antoinette ordered both men out of their car. When they did, Wallace saw Roger holding a gun. Wallace charged at Roger and the 2 men got into a fight. When police backup arrived, Frank told the officers that Wallace was the bad guy and Roger was the good guy. Wallace was arrested and charged with attempted murder and armed robbery. Antoinette is an example of what happens when the institutions that are supposed to serve us take shortcuts. Yes, the New Orleans Police Department bestowed the power of the badge to a tormented soul. Wow. So thank you all for watching the video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you all in my next video.